Up to about 2007, I told people that I was pretty secure in God's call in my life and His love for me. But I lived with this once a month, unexplainable sense of failure in ministry and that there was something wrong with me. But God had really done a lot to speak to my identity early on in my journey. I remember one time I was going on a prayer walk and just reviewing some verses and praying them back to God, and I hit 1 John 3:1, and from that I just felt like God was telling me, Jim, you're my son. And as meaningful as that was, honestly, I still experienced those feelings of shame and just failure. And it was like my experience defied what I felt like God was trying to tell me through the Word. So my friend in 2007 invited me to pray for inner healing. Up until that point, I had seen in Scripture how God expected us to understand His voice through the written Word, but I didn't really see how He expected us to hear Him through prayer. And what I since found out, God's written Word is really just Him speaking to His people who had a posture of listening to Him, and then they wrote those words down for us. And inner healing is really just that same posture of listening to Him. So as my friend prayed over the time and asked the Lord for protection, and he just said, Lord, what would you like to speak to Jim about, a painful emotion or a pattern? And in that place where my thoughts are, I heard this word fear. And I told him, well, I think I heard this word fear, but I'm not really sure if that's God speaking to me or if I'm just making this up. And he said, well, okay, Lord, what is this a fear of? And I heard the idea of fear of condemnation. So then he asked, well, Lord, when did this first take place in Jim's life? I was brought to a hazy memory of my childhood living room, and my dad is in his familiar chair and he's reading his paper, and I don't dare interrupt him, and I really shouldn't leave the room. And my dad was always pretty angry and distant, and so I think I concluded as a kid that why is my dad always upset, and there must be something wrong with me. I didn't know I concluded that. It was just kind of buried in there, and I just really hated myself. Then my friend prayed and asked the Lord, where were you when Jim was feeling this? And before my friend could ask another question, Jesus just puts His hand on my shoulder and says, you're my son. And at that point, my heart was just really struck with the feelings of worth and value in a place where there had been a lot of pain and shame. I don't mind telling you, I cried hard, cried really hard. And so, honestly, those feelings do come back every now and then, but they don't have their hold over my perspective like they did before. It could be a whole day that I felt like that, and I just really hear God telling me over and over that He loves me, that He's with me, He thinks of me as His son, and it's really freeing, really freeing. And God's allowed me the privilege of praying with some other people, and it's just really neat to see Him helping people experience what He's trying to tell them through the Word. I think we all know truth, but we just have a real hard time experiencing it as true of us.